The awakening. The day Earth received its first diplomatic message from the Zelkari Confederation, Admiral Sarah Chen was feeding her goldfish. The tiny orange creature swam in lazy circles, completely oblivious to the fact that humanity had just been invited to join the galactic community. Sarah would later remember this moment with bitter irony. Admiral Chen to the Situation Room, Priority Alpha, crackled through her communicator. She sighed, sprinkled the last of the fish food, and muttered, "Sorry, Fred. Looks like Mommy's got to go save the world again." The Situation Room buzzed with nervous energy. Screens displayed alien script that looked like someone had sneezed on a keyboard. General Marcus Kane, a mountain of a man with scars that told stories he'd never share, stood at the head of the table looking like he'd rather wrestle a bear than deal with aliens. "What do we know?" Sarah asked, sliding into her chair. Dr. Emily Watson, the basis in a linguist, pushed her glasses up her nose. Her hands trembled slightly as she spoke. "The message is condescending. They're offering us what they call guided integration into their galactic society." Guided integration? Kane's voice could have cut steel. Sounds like fancy talk for "we're taking over." Emily cleared her throat and began reading the translated message. Her voice grew smaller with each word. "To the primitive inhabitants of the third planet of Sol System, your recent achievement of faster-than-light communication has been noted. The Zelkari Confederation extends an invitation for supervised membership in the Galactic Council. Your species shows potential despite obvious evolutionary limitations." The room fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop, if pins made sounds when they were absolutely furious. Sarah felt her jaw clench. "Evolutionary limitations?" "It gets worse," Emily continued. "They list our deficiencies. Apparently, we're too aggressive, too emotional, and too attached to something they call primitive pack bonding behaviors." General Kane laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. It was a kind of laugh that preceded very bad decisions. Primitive pack bonding. They mean friendship, don't they? Among other things, yes. President Martinez's voice crackled through the secure line from Washington. "Admiral Chen, I need options. These aliens are positioning ships at the edge of our solar system. They're calling it a peaceful observation fleet." Sarah studied the tactical displays. 12 alien vessels, each the size of a small city, hanging in space like mechanical vultures. "How long until they reach Earth orbit?" "At current velocity, 72 hours, reported Lieutenant Torres from the communication station. The next 3 days pass in a blur of frantic preparation and increasingly arrogant messages from the Zelkari. They sent cultural assessments that read like report cards written by disappointed teachers. Humanity scored poorly in emotional regulation, logical decision-making, and something called Species Maturity Index. But it was their final message that pushed Sarah over the edge. "Admiral," Emily's voice shook as she read, "they're demanding we surrender our military capabilities before they enter orbit. They say, and I quote, 'Primitive species cannot be trusted with weapons that might harm their betters.'" Kane's fist slammed onto the table. "Their betters? I'll show them better." Sarah held up a hand. "Wait, Dr. Watson, what exactly have we told them about ourselves?" Emily blinked in confusion. "Only what they asked for. Basic technological capabilities, population centers, governmental structure. And our military capabilities? We listed our nuclear arsenal, conventional forces, space defense platforms." Sarah felt a slow smile spread across her face. It was not a nice smile. "What about the Aurora project?" The room went quiet. Kane raised an eyebrow. "Sarah, that's still classified beyond top secret." "Not for much longer." Sarah turned to the communication station. "Lieutenant Torres, patch me through to all Zelkari vessels. Full spectrum broadcast." "Ma'am, are you sure about this?" "Trust me." The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the lead Zelkari vessel. The alien commander, Vel'tar, looked like someone had stretched a gray rubber person and forgotten to add enough facial features. His 3 eyes blinked in sequence, which Sarah found deeply unsettling. "Primitive human leader." Vel'tar's voice came to the translator with all the warmth of a refrigerated morgue. "You will prepare for immediate integration protocols. Resistance is inadvisable." Sarah leaned back in her chair and smiled sweetly. Hello there, Vel'tar. Such a lovely name. It sounds like a medication for foot fungus. The alien's middle eye twitched. Your species' tendency toward inappropriate humor is noted in your file. Oh, we have a file? How exciting. Tell me, what else does our file say? That you are a young species, recently descended from primitive hunters. Your emotion responses are poorly controlled. Your technology is crude, and your social structures are chaotic. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. Fascinating assessment. Very thorough, though I noticed you missed a few things. The Confederation's analysis is complete and accurate. Really? Because I don't see any mention of Project Aurora in your little report. For the first time, Vel'tar's confident demeanor wavered. What is Project Aurora? Sarah's smile turned predatory. Oh, it's nothing much. Just a little science experiment we've been working on. General Kane, would you be so kind as to show our new friends what they missed? Kane's grin was absolutely terrifying. With pleasure, Admiral. The tactical display shifted, showing the outer solar system. Suddenly, dozens of new contacts appeared on the screen. They had been invisible moments before, hidden in the cosmic background radiation. Vel'tar's 3 eyes widened simultaneously. What are those? Those? Sarah's voice dripped with false innocence. Oh, those are just some friends of ours. You see, while you were busy cataloging our primitive weapons, you missed the most important thing about humanity. The alien commander's skin had shifted from gray to a sickly green color. Impossible. Our sensors showed no other ships. That's because they're not ships, Vel'tar. Sarah stood up, her voice hardening. They're ecosystems, living creatures, our friends. The camera feed from the nearest contact resolved into something that defied description. It looked like someone had taken a whale, crossed it with a spaceship, and then taught it to photosynthesize in the vacuum of space. Bioluminescent patterns pulsed along its kilometer-long hull. What might have been eyes, each the size of a football field, turned toward the Zelkari fleet. Meet the Leviathans, Sarah continued conversationally. We found them hibernating in the Kuiper Belt about 15 years ago. Magnificent creatures, older than your entire civilization, we estimate. More creatures appeared on screen. Some looked like mechanical jellyfish trailing tentacles of pure energy. Others resembled crystalline spiders the size of asteroids. Each one was unique, beautiful, and absolutely terrifying. The Zelkari fleet is now completely surrounded. Lieutenant Torres reported with barely concealed glee. Vel'tar's voice came out as a strangled whisper. These are the creatures from the Void Sector, the ones that destroyed the Kethran Armada. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Oh, you know about them? Well, that's awkward. See, we've been taking care of them, feeding them, protecting them, keeping them happy and well-rested. You've been domesticating Void Leviathans? Domesticating? Sarah laughed, and it was a sound that promised terrible things. Oh, Vel'tar, we don't domesticate anything. We make friends. One of the creatures, a thing that looked like a living nebula with teeth, drifted closer to the Zelkari flagship. Its song, transmitted across subspace frequencies, made the alien ship's hull ring like a bell. It likes you, Sarah observed. Although I should warn you, Tiamat there hasn't eaten in about 6 months. We've been keeping her on a strict diet. Kane leaned into the camera, his scarred face wearing an expression of pure malicious joy. You know what's funny about human evolution, rubber face? We didn't just learn to hunt. We learned to befriend the apex predators. Sarah nodded sagely. It's true. Dogs, horses, dolphins, whales. Hell, some humans even keep tigers as pets. It's a quirk of our primitive pack bonding behaviors. The largest of the creatures, something that might have been a living asteroid covered in what looked suspiciously like weapons, slowly rotated to face the Zelkari fleet. Ancient scars covered its surface, each one telling a story of battles fought in the depths of space. That's Kronos, Sarah said fondly. He's the grumpy old grandfather of the group. Been alive since before your homeworld developed multicellular life. He doesn't like strangers very much. Vel'tar's ship shuddered as something huge and invisible brushed against its shields. Admiral, Torres called out excitedly. I'm picking up massive gravitational anomalies throughout the system. Whatever these things are, they're affecting space-time itself. Sarah walked closer to the camera, her eyes boring into Vel'tar's 3 terrified orbs. You want to know the really funny part about your little assessment? You got everything wrong. We're not too emotional. We're exactly emotional enough to earn the loyalty of gods. We're not too aggressive. We're aggressive enough to defend our friends. And our primitive pack bonding, that's not a weakness. Vel'tar, that's our superpower. The alien commander tried to speak, but only managed a strangled gurgle. Sarah continued, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than any shout. See, while you were busy building your neat little confederation of scared, logical species, we were out here in the dark making friends with nightmares. And now you've threatened our pack. One of the creatures, looking like a cross between a manta ray and a solar flare, glided past camera. Its passing left trails of exotic particles that made the very fabric of space shimmer. The thing is, Sarah said conversationally, we could have been friends. We're actually quite friendly once you get to know us. But you had to go and call us primitive. She turned to Kane. General, how many of our friends are currently in the system? Kane consulted his tablet with exaggerated care. Current count stands at 47 adult Leviathans, 12 juveniles, and what appears to be a mating pair of void krakens. Void krakens? Sarah's eyebrows shot up. Oh my, Vel'tar, you picked a very bad time to visit. They're quite protective when they're nesting. The space around the Zelkari fleet began to ripple as something massive moved through dimensions that human physics had only theorized about. Reality itself seemed to bend and twist. Sarah sat back down, crossing her legs casually. So here's what's going to happen, Vel'tar. You're going to take your little fleet and leave our solar system. You're going to go back to your confederation and tell them that Earth is under protection of forces they really don't want to understand. And if we refuse, Vel'tar managed to croak. Sarah's smile could have frozen stars. Then we let our friends decide whether you're worth the effort of digesting. Fair warning, though they haven't had a proper meal in quite some time. As if summoned by her words, Tiamat drifted closer to the flagship. Her song grew louder, harmonizing with the others until the very asteroids began to resonate. The sound was beautiful, haunting, and absolutely primal. The alien commander looked around his bridge at his terrified crew. Several of them had changed colors entirely, cycling through what could only be described as a palette of pure panic. This cannot be. How did your primitive species? Sarah held up a finger. We're not primitive, Vel'tar. We're selective. There's a difference. She gestured to the tactical display, where dozens of ancient entities moved through space like living constellations. You see, while you and your confederation spent millennia hiding behind energy shields and logic protocols, we spent our time learning the most important lesson in the universe. Which is? Sarah's eyes glittered with dark humor. It's not about being the biggest predator in the system. It's about being the friend of all the biggest predators in the system. They called us primitive until we showed them the monsters we chose not to kill. The reckoning, the silence that followed Sarah's declaration stretched like taffy in a black hole. Vel'tar stared at the tactical display, where cosmic horrors drifted through space with the casual grace of house cats who happened to be capable of consuming entire star systems. You're bluffing, he finally whispered, though his voice carried all the confidence of a paper umbrella in a hurricane. Sarah tilted her head, studying him like a scientist examining a particularly stupid specimen. General Kane, what was the name of that Kethran admiral who said the same thing? Kane consulted his tablet with theatrical precision. Admiral Zexthal of the Kethran 7th Fleet also claimed we were bluffing, right up until Kronos ate his flagship. Ah, yes, Zexthal. Whatever happened to the rest of his fleet? Scattered to the stellar winds, ma'am. Turns out Leviathans don't chew their food very thoroughly. Vel'tar's middle eye began twitching rapidly. The Kethran armada vanished 3 cycles ago. There were no survivors, no wreckage, no trace. Sarah nodded sympathetically. That's what happens when you try to establish a protective occupation of our outer system research stations. We tried to warn them, but they were convinced we were just another primitive species making empty threats. The camera feed shifted to show the aftermath of what had once been a mighty alien fleet. Debris fields told stories of ships that had been systematically disassembled by creatures that treated metal hulls like children's toys. You see, Vel'tar, Sarah continued conversationally, the Kethran made the same mistake you're making right now. They assume that because we're young and emotional and attached to our friends, we must be weak. Lieutenant Torres looked up from her station, barely suppressing a grin. Admiral, I'm receiving a priority transmission from Deep Space Observatory 7. Put it through. The voice of Dr. James Park crackled through the speakers, barely containing his excitement. Admiral Chen, we've got movement in the Oort cloud. Something big is waking up out there. Sarah's smile could have lit up a small moon. How big, Doctor? Well, ma'am, remember that signal we picked up last month? The one that made our equipment think there was a planet where there definitely wasn't a planet. The one you said was probably just a sensor malfunction? Yes, ma'am. Well, it turns out it wasn't a malfunction. It was something sleeping. And your little conversation with our alien friends seems to have been one hell of an alarm clock. The main tactical display updated, showing the outer reaches of the solar system. Something was moving out there, something so massive it was actually affecting the orbit of distant asteroids. The gravity sensors were going haywire. Vel'tar's 3 eyes focused on the display with the kind of horror usually reserved for tax audits and dentist appointments. What is that? Sarah leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. That, my dear uninvited guest, is what we've been calling the Old One. We're not entirely sure what it is, but our best guess is that it's some kind of primordial entity that predates most of recorded galactic history. Impossible. Nothing that large could exist without being detected by the Confederation's deep space sensors. Dr. Watson looked up from her xenobiology console, her earlier nervousness replaced by scientific fascination. Oh, but it was detected. We found references to it in 17 different ancient civilizations' mythology. They all called it different names, but the descriptions were remarkably consistent. She pulled up a series of holographic displays showing artwork from various dead civilizations. Each one depicted a massive entity sleeping in the void between stars, surrounded by smaller creatures that bore a striking resemblance to Leviathans currently surrounding the Zelkari fleet. The Vortan called it the Dreaming Deep. The ancient axiom referred to it as the Star Mother. The Helios Collective's last transmission before they vanished mentioned something they called the Void Heart. Sarah nodded approvingly. Excellent research, Doctor. What's particularly interesting is that every single one of these civilizations disappeared shortly after their first and only mention of this entity. Vel'tar's skin had now shifted from green to a disturbing shade of purple. You're saying this thing has been destroying civilizations for millennia? Oh, no, Sarah laughed, and the sound was like wind chimes made of broken promises. We're saying it's been sleeping for millennia. There's a difference. Kane stepped forward, his scarred face wearing an expression of paternal pride. See, what happened was, about 20 years ago, our deep space exploration vessels started finding these Leviathans hibernating in the outer system. At first, we thought they were just really big space whales. Then we realized they were intelligent, Sarah continued. Not just intelligent, but ancient, older than most of the species in your precious Confederation. They've been waiting out there, guarding something. The tactical display zoomed in on the massive form moving through the Oort cloud. Details began to resolve, and they were not comforting details. What had seemed like a planetoid was clearly biological. Vast organs pulsed with their own light, and structures that might have been sensory apparatus swept through space like the tentacles of some cosmic jellyfish. When we made first contact with the Leviathans, Sarah said, her voice taking on the tone of someone sharing a favorite bedtime story, we expected them to be hostile. After all, we're just another young species mucking around in their territory. But they weren't hostile, Kane added. They were curious. Seems they'd never encountered a species that tried to communicate instead of just running away screaming. Torres called out from her station, Admiral, the Old One is definitely responding to our conversation. Its bioluminescent patterns are syncing with the Leviathan's communication frequencies. Sarah clapped her hands together in delight. Oh, wonderful. It's been so long since we've had proper visitors to introduce the grandmother. Vel'tar made a sound like a deflating balloon. Grandmother? Well, we had to call her something. The Leviathans refer to her as something that roughly translates to the first mother who dreams of stars, but that's a bit of a mouthful for casual conversation. Dr. Watson pulled up another display, this one showing complex mathematical equations that seemed to writhe across the screen. Based on our analysis of the Old One's neural activity, we believe it's been in a state of dormancy for approximately 2 million years. Its last period of activity corresponds with the disappearance of the predecessor civilization. The predecessors built the hyperspace gateway network, Vel'tar whispered. They were the most advanced civilization in galactic history. Sarah nodded solemnly, were being the operative term. According to Leviathans, the predecessors made the mistake of trying to weaponize entities like the Old One. They thought they could control cosmic forces beyond their understanding. She gestured to the tactical display, where the massive entity continued its slow approach toward the inner system. The Leviathans have been keeping watch ever since, making sure nobody else made the same mistake. They've been the galaxy's protectors, and nobody even knew they existed. Kane chuckled darkly. Until we showed up with our primitive pack bonding behaviors and decided to make friends with the cosmic horror babysitters. The beautiful thing about humans, Sarah continued, is that we don't try to control things we can't understand. We try to befriend them. We offer them food, shelter, and genuine affection. And in return, they offer us their protection. The Old One's approach was causing visible distortions in space-time. Stars in the background were shifting position as gravity waves rippled through the system. Several of the smaller Leviathans had begun singing in harmonies that made human equipment resonate like tuning forks. Admiral, Torres reported, her voice tinged with awe, I'm detecting massive quantum fluctuations throughout the system. It's like reality itself is being rewritten. Vel'tar's flagship shuddered as something invisible and immense passed nearby. Emergency klaxons began wailing on the alien bridge. Your ship's artificial intelligence is probably having a nervous breakdown right about now, Sarah observed casually. Most advanced AIs can't process the Old One's presence without experiencing what we call existential overflow errors. This is madness, Vel'tar gasped. No species should have this kind of power. Sarah's expression grew serious for the first time in the conversation. You're absolutely right. No species should have this power. That's why we don't have it. She stood up, her voice taking on the authority of someone who had stared into the abyss and convinced it to fetch her morning coffee. We don't control these entities, Vel'tar. We don't command them or direct them or use them as weapons. We simply exist alongside them as friends and allies. Kane nodded approvingly. The Leviathans could have wiped out humanity the moment we entered their territory. Instead, they chose to teach us. They showed us wonders beyond imagination and trusted us with secrets that could reshape the galaxy. And in return, Sarah continued, we gave them something they'd never experienced before. Companionship without agenda. Friendship without ulterior motives. Love without conditions. The Old One's massive form was now visible to the naked eye, a living constellation moving through space with ponderous grace. Its song, transmitted across frequencies that human science was only beginning to understand, harmonized with the Leviathans in a chorus that spoke of eons and eternity. The Kethran Armada learned too late that when you threaten humanity, you threaten the pack, Sarah said softly. And this pack includes entities that predate your entire civilization. Vel'tar looked around his bridge at his terrified crew. Several of them were openly weeping, their minds struggling to process the sheer magnitude of what they were witnessing. What do you want from us? He finally managed. Sarah's smile returned, but this time it carried genuine warmth instead of predatory menace. What do we want? We want exactly what we've always wanted, Vel'tar. We want to be left alone to live our lives, love our friends, and explore the universe in peace. She paused, letting that sink in before continuing. But if you insist on calling us primitive, if you insist on treating us like children who need to be supervised and controlled, then you're going to discover just how primitive we can be. Kane stepped forward, his expression deadly serious. See, the thing about pack loyalty is that it works both ways. These entities protect us, but we also protect them. And right now, your presence here is making our friends nervous. As if summoned by his words, Kronos, the ancient living asteroid, rotated slowly to face the Zelkari fleet. Weapons that looked like they had been grown rather than built began to power up along its scarred surface. Kronos fought in the war that ended the predecessor civilization, Dr. Watson said quietly. He's seen entire star systems burn. Your little fleet registers as barely more than space debris to him. Vel'tar's voice came out as barely a whisper. How did your species earn the loyalty of such entities? Sarah sat back down, her posture relaxing into something almost conversational. It's quite simple, really. We fed them when they were hungry. We kept them company when they were lonely. We sang to them when they were sad. We celebrated with them when they were happy. You treated cosmic entities like pets? Like family, Kane corrected firmly. Like friends. Like beings deserving of respect and affection regardless of their power level. The old one song grew louder, joined now by what sounded like dozens of other voices from the deep places between stars. The harmony was hauntingly beautiful and absolutely terrifying. Admiral, Torres called out, her voice tight with excitement and fear. I'm detecting multiple hyperspace signatures throughout the system. Something big is coming through. The tactical display updated, showing new contacts materializing at the edge of sensor range. These weren't Leviathans or other cosmic entities. These were ships, sleek and organic-looking, but clearly technological. Sarah's eyes widened with genuine surprise and delight. Oh my, Vel'tar, you're about to meet the neighbors. Neighbors? The Gardener fleet. They're another species we befriended. Very nice people. Once you get past their tendency to turn hostile civilizations into fertilizer for their garden worlds. The new ships moved with fluid grace, their biomechanical hulls rippling with patterns of light that matched the songs of the Leviathans. They took up positions around the old one in a formation that spoke of long practice and deep understanding. Vel'tar's three eyes darted between the various displays, showing forces that could casually rearrange solar systems. How many allies do you have? Sarah grinned. Would you like the complete list? It might take a while. She gestured to Lieutenant Torres, who began reading from her tactical display. Let's see. We got the Leviathan pods, the Gardener fleet, the Crystal Singers of the Helix Nebula, the Iron Shepherds of the asteroid fields, the Deep Swimmers from the ocean worlds, the Void Walkers who live between dimensions. Stop, Vel'tar pleaded. Just stop. Sarah leaned forward, her voice gentle but implacable. The universe is full of wonders. Vel'tar, ancient entities and young civilizations, cosmic forces and simple creatures, all trying to find their place in the great dance of existence. Humanity's gift isn't our technology, or our weapons, or our logic. She paused, looking directly into his three terrified eyes. Our gift is that we see the universe not as a hierarchy to be climbed or a resource to be exploited, but as a community to be joined. We don't conquer. We don't subjugate. We don't guide or supervise or integrate. Kane nodded grimly. We make friends, and we protect our friends. And when someone threatens our friends, the old one's massive form pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that spoke of eons of patience finally reaching an end. The Leviathan songs grew more complex, weaving harmonies that made the fabric of space itself vibrate in sympathy. Well, Sarah said cheerfully, let's just say that you really don't want to find out what happens when someone threatens our friends. Vel'tar looked at his tactical display, at his terrified crew, at the impossible forces arrayed against his fleet, and finally, quietly, he spoke the words that would save his species from extinction. The Zelkari Confederation formally withdraws its offer of guided integration to the species of Sol 3. Sarah's smile was radiant. Excellent decision, Vel'tar. See? I knew you were smarter than you looked. The old one song began to fade as a massive entity slowly turned away from the inner system, returning to its patient vigil in the outer darkness. The Leviathan's harmonies shifted to something that sounded almost like laughter. Safe travels back to your Confederation, Sarah said warmly. And do give them our regards. Tell them that Earth appreciates their interest, but we're quite happy with our current arrangements. As the Zelkari fleet began its retreat, accelerating toward the edge of the system with what could only be described as undignified haste, Sarah turned to Kane with a satisfied expression. You know, Marcus, I think that went rather well. Kane chuckled, watching the alien ships flee like startled rabbits. Think they learned their lesson? Sarah looked out at the cosmic entities that filled their system, ancient and powerful and inexorably loyal to the strange young species that had offered them friendship without condition. Oh, I think the word will get around, she said softly. After all, there's nothing the galaxy fears more than a primitive species with really, really good friends. In the depths of space, the old ones settled back into an eternal watch, dreaming dreams of stars and songs and the small, warm creatures who had reminded it what it meant to be loved.